Chapter 6. Dwayne Hoover sat in the house, Dwayne Hoover sat in the used Plymouth Fury in his own vacant lot for an hour, listening to West Virginia. He was told about health insurance for pennies a day, about how to get better performance for his car. He was told what to do about constipation. He was offered a Bible which had everything that God or Jesus had actually said out loud or printed in red capital letters. He was offered a plant which would attract and eat disease-carrying insects in his home. All this was stored away in Dwayne's memory in case he should need it later on. He had all kinds of stuff in there. While Dwayne sat there, so alone, the oldest inhabitant of Midland City was dying on the county hospital at the foot of Fairchild Boulevard, which was 9 miles away. She was Mary Young. She was 108 years old. She was black. Mary Young's parents had been human slaves in Kentucky. There was a tiny connection between Mary Young and Dwayne Hoover. She did the laundry for Dwayne's family for a few months, back when Dwayne was a little boy. She told Bible stories and stories about slavery to little Dwayne. She told him about a public hanging of a white man she had seen in Cincinnati when she was a little girl. A black intern at the county hospital now watched Mary Young die of pneumonia. The intern did not know her. He had been in Midland City for only a week. He wasn't even a fellow American, although he had taken his medical degree at Harvard. He was an Indario. He was a Nigerian. His name was Cyprian Uguind. He felt no kingship with Mary or any blacks. He felt kingship only with Indarios. As she died, Mary was alone on the planet, as were Dwayne Hoover and Kilgore Trout. She had never reproduced. There were no friends or relatives to watch her die, so she spoke her very last words on the planet to Cyprian Uguind. She said she did not have enough breath left to make her vocal cords buzz. She could only move her lips noiselessly. Here's all she had to say about death. Oh my, oh my. Like all earthlings at this point, Mary Young sent faint reminders to herself and those who had known her. She released a small cloud of telepathic butterflies, and one of these brushed the cheek of Dwayne Hoover 9 miles away. Dwayne heard a tired voice from somewhere behind his head, even though there was no one back there. It said this to Dwayne. Oh my, oh my. Dwayne's bad chemicals now made him put his car in gear. He drove out of the vacant lot, proceeded sedately down the Union Avenue, which paralleled the interstate. He went past his principal place of business, which was Dwayne Hoover's extant 11 Pontiac Village, and he turned into the parking lot of the new Holiday Inn next door. Dwayne owned a third of the inn, in partnership with Midland City's leading orthodontist, Dr. Alfred Martinemo and Bill Miller, who was the chairman of the parole board at the adult correctional institution at Shepherdstown, among other things. Dwayne went up the inn's back steps to the roof without meeting anybody. There was a full moon. There were 2 full moons. The new Mildred Berry Memorial Center for the Arts was a translucent sphere on stilts. It was illuminated from the inside now, and it looked like a moon. Dwayne gazed over the sleeping city. He had been born there. He had spent the first 3 years of his life in an orphanage only 2 miles from where he stood. He had been adopted and educated there. He owned not only the Pontiac Agency and a piece of the new Holiday Inn, he owned 3 burger chefs, 2 and 5 coin-operated car washes, a piece of Sugar Creek Drive-In Theater, radio station YMCY, and 3 Maples Par 3 golf course, the 1,700 shares of common stock in Bertrand and Barterdon Limited, a local electronics firm. He owned a dozen of vacant lots. He was on the board of directors at Midland County National Bank, but now Midland City looked unfamiliar and frightening to Dwayne. Where am I? He said. He even forgot that his wife Celia had committed suicide, for instance, by eating Duranil, a mixture of sodium hydroxide and aluminum flakes, which was meant to clear drains. Celia became a small volcano, since she was composed of the same sorts of substances which commonly clogged drains. Dwayne even forgot that his only child, a son, had grown up to be a notorious homosexual. His name was George, but everybody called him Bunny. He played the piano in the cocktail lounge of the new Holiday Inn. "Where am I?" said Dwayne. Chapter 7. Kilgore Trout took a leak in the men's room of the New York City movie house. There was a sign on the wall next to the roller tower. It advised a massage parlor called the Next Sultan's Harem. Massage parlors were something new and exciting in New York. Men could go in there and photograph naked women, or they can paint the women's naked bodies with water-soluble paints. Men could rub all over the women until their penises squirted jism into Turkish towels. It's a full life and a merry one, said Kilgore Trout. There was a message written in pencil on the tiles by the roller towel. This was it. What is the purpose of life? Let's see. Trout plundered his pockets for a pen or a pencil. He had to answer the question. But he had nothing to write, not even a burnt match. So he left the question unanswered, but here's what he would have written if he had found anything to write with. To be the eyes, the ears, and the conscience of the creator of the universe, you fool. When Trout headed back for a seat in the theater, he played at being the eyes and ears and conscience of the creator of the universe. He sent messages by telepathy to the creator wherever he was. He reported that men's room had been clean as a whistle, that carpeting under my feet, he had signaled from the lobby, in spring and new. I think it must be a miracle fiber. It's blue. You know what I mean by blue, and so on. When he got to the auditorium itself, the house lights were on. Nobody was there but the manager, who was also the ticket taker, and the bouncer, and the janitor. He was sweeping the filth from the floor between the seats. He was a middle-aged white man. "No more fun tonight, grandfather," he said to Trout. "Time to go home." Trout didn't protest, neither did he leave immediately. He examined a green enameled steel box in the back of the auditorium. It contained the projector and the sound system and the films. There was a wire that led from the box to a plug in the wall. There was a hole in front of the box. That was how the pictures got out. On the side of the box was a simple switch. It looked like this. Now I'm going to go take Valentine's phone from driving me crazy. No more bone. No more. Yucky. Okay. It intrigued Trout to know that he had only a flick of the switch and the people would start fucking and sucking again. "Good night, grandfather," said the manager pointedly. Trout took his leave from the machinery reluctantly. He said this about it to the manager. "It fills such a need, this machine, and it's so easy to operate." As Trout departed, he sent this telepathic message to the creator of the universe, serving as his eyes and ears and conscience. "I'm headed for the 42nd Street now. How much do you already know about 42nd Street?" Chapter 8. Trout wandered out onto the sidewalk of 42nd Street. It was a dangerous place to be. The whole city was dangerous because of chemicals and the uneven distribution of wealth and so on. A lot of people were like Dwayne. They created chemicals in their own bodies which were bad for their heads. But there were thousands upon thousands of other people in the city who had bought bad chemicals and ate them or sniffed them or injected them into their veins with devices that looked like this. Sometimes they even sniffed bad chemicals up their assholes, and their assholes looked like this. People took such awful chances with chemicals in their bodies because they wanted the quality of their lives to improve. They lived in ugly places where there were only ugly things to do. They didn't own diddly squat, so they couldn't improve their surroundings, so they did their best to make their insides beautiful instead. The result had been catastrophic so far: suicide, theft, murder, and insanity, and so on. But new chemicals were coming into the market all the time. 20 feet away from Trout, there were 42nd Street. A 14-year-old white boy lay unconscious in the doorway of a pornography store. He had swallowed half a pint of a new type of paint remover, which had gone on sale for the first time only the day before. He had also swallowed 2 pills which were intended to prevent contagious abortion in cattle, which is called Bang's disease. Trout was petrified there on 42nd Street. It had given him a life not worth living, but it had also given him the iron will to live. This was a common combination on the planet Earth. The theater manager came out and locked the door behind him, and 2 young black prostitutes materialized from nowhere. They asked Trout and the manager if they would like to have some fun. They were cheerful and unafraid because a tube of Norwegian hemorrhoid remedy which they had eaten about a half an hour before. The manufacturer had never intended the stuff to be eaten. People were supposed to squirt it up their assholes. These were country girls. They had grown up in the rural south of the nation. Their ancestors had been used as agricultural machinery. The white farmers down there weren't using machines made of meat anymore, though, because machines made out of metal were cheaper and more reliable and required simpler homes. So the black machines had to get out of there or starve to death. They came to cities because every place else had signs like these on their fences and trees. Kilgore Trout once wrote a story called This Means You. It was set in the Hawaiian Islands, a place where the lucky winners of Dwayne Hoover's contest in Midland City were supposed to go. Every bit of land on the islands was owned by only about 40 people, and in the story, Trout had those people decide to exercise their property rights to the full. They put up no trespassing signs on everything. This created terrible problems for the million other people on the islands. The law of gravity required that they stick somewhere on the surface, either that or that they could go out into the water and bob offshore. But the federal government came through with an emergency program. It gave a balloon full of helium to every man, woman, and child who didn't own property. There was a cable with a harness on it dangling from each balloon. With the help of the balloons, Hawaiians could go on inhabiting the island without always sticking to things other people owned. The prostitutes worked for a pimp now. He was splendid and cruel. He was God to them. They took their free will away from them, which was perfectly all right. They didn't want it anyways. It was as though they had surrendered themselves to Jesus. For instance, they could live unselfishly and trustingly, except that they had surrendered to a pimp instead. Their childhoods were over. They were dying now. Earth was a tin-horn planet as far as they were concerned. When Trout and the theater manager, 2 tin horns, said,